Hello and welcome to another pen video from me, Penultimate Dave. So I have here another currently inked pens set for this week. I think let's go through these briefly one by one. We'll go through them in a little bit more detail and then we'll do a writing sample. So from left to right we have a Visconti Medici, and this is in the golden black. We have a Montegrappa, and this is the Extra 1930, and this is the striped zebra celluloid. We have a Montegrapper Extra 1930, and this is in the vertical zebra. We have an Esterbrook Estie, and this is an oversize. It's the Gold Rush, and it's the Prospector. We have another Esterbrook Estie oversize, and this is in the Wine Divine. We have a Montegrapper Extra Otto, and this is in the Pearl Grey. We have a Montegrapper Extra 1930, and this is in the black and white. We have an Esterbrook Estie Oversize, and this is in the Sparkle in Garnet. Another Esterbrook Estie Oversize, and this is in the Rocky Top. And we have a Gravitas, and this is the Skittles in the Sentry. So I think let's go through these pens in a little bit more detail. So this is a really beautiful Visconti Medici, and this is, I have a number of these already, or have had a number of these. I had two in the brown. I still have one. I sold one of them. I decided I was still missing the one that I sold, but I decided I would pick up another one in this, what they call golden black version. So there's a lot of gold there, and that's sort of gold. I want to say it's shimmer, but it's not. It's, I guess it's, the term that Visconti use is acro silk. So acro for acrylic or resin, and silk, which is silk fibers, and they mix it together to get this lovely, lovely silky sort of chatoyancy, sparkly sort of version there. Now, this is a faceted pen. It is a Paravac filler. It's a single reservoir. You've got the hook safe lock mechanism, and you can see there it's got an 18-karat gold nib. This is the new nib from Visconti. This fits in the size of my hand really well. I can post the cap if I want to. I'm sure most of you know by now I typically do not, but you can see this material here. If I show you that bit of gold here, if I rotate it round, you can see that it kind of is sort of semi-translucent, the gold. So it's quite interesting, a material. So I do like this pen a lot, and I'm glad that I was able to pick that pen up and add it to my collection. Now, I have been, and this is probably going to be a little bit of controversy here, but I've been on a little bit of a Montegrappa kick lately. And as you probably know, I do already have two Montegrappa pens in my collection. I have the Montegrappa Extra 1930 Shiny Lines Dove, and I also have the Bartolo Mio Ferrocina Shiny Circles. Now, I do like the Montegrappas. The nibs are a little bit harder than Visconti's in terms of bounce or flexibility. So, I do still like them. So I added this one to my collection, and this is the Montegrappa Extra 1930, and this is the striped zebra. Now, this is a really beautiful celluloid, and it has this huge chatoyance there. Now, strange enough, when I actually bought this pen, I bought it new old stock, and as with a lot of sellers, they don't really take beautiful photos of the pens that they're trying to sell. And this zebra here, which actually shines beautifully, did not shine in the photos. So I really would like sellers, and this is not just one-off sellers, these are people that are actually selling pens for a living, to take better photographs, because a lot of the photographs they take are really not that great. But I'm glad that I picked up this pen, and I'm glad I picked it up for the price. I looked as a comparison at other zebras, striped zebras online, and I saw that they had a lot of brightness to that celluloid and also chatoyance there. So I decided I would make a pump for it and go for it, and I did. Now, this is a piston filling pen. It's got the solid silver section here, and you've got the Montegrappa number 8 size nib there with an ABS, or actually not an ABS plastic feed, it's an ebonite feed on the extra 1930s. Now, this silver will tarnish over time, so you do need to polish it. And I have to say, maybe a year or two ago, I wasn't a fan of that silver being tarnished. But to be honest, as time goes on, it doesn't bother me so much. You can just polish that up and it's perfectly fine. Same with the trims here. They tend to go a little bit dull over time. And I have another Montegrapper Extra 1930 here. And this, unlike this one, which is a striped zebra, this is the vertical zebra. And again, you can see, again, it's celluloid, but it has this beautiful material here. So it really, really does look lovely. So I decided I would pick this one up as well. Now, again, this is a piston filling pen, silver section, and you have a number 8 size Montegrappa nib there. And you can see a little bit of ink there. I just got a little bit of ink on my finger, so I will wipe that off. But you can see here, though, that this is, again, another ebonite feed. So all of the Montegrappa Extra 1930s have ebonite feeds. Can you post the cap? Yeah, you can. It posts onto the piston knob. So I wouldn't really want to, because you're going to actually, when you pull that off, you're going to actually twist the piston knob. So it's not a pen that I would normally post. I typically don't post that many pens anyway. The next pen here is an Esterbrook Estie. And this is the Oversize. Now, this is in the Gold Rush Prospector. Now, this is a really beautiful, beautiful material. Yes, it has got real diamond dust in that pen. And you can see that pen absolutely sparkle. It's a really, really beautiful pen. Now, these do come with steel nibs and ABS plastic feeds. You've got the Esterbrook Estie nib there. And that is a fine nib. These are quite long. These are longer than the Montegrappas, for sure. I can post the cap, but it doesn't post deeply and it wobbles a little bit. So it's not a cap that I would really post again. But that is a beautiful pen. Steel nib, but it writes really nice. The next pen here is, again, another Esterbrook Estie Oversize. And this is the Wine Divine. Beautiful material there. And it still has the diamond dust material, the diamond cast material there. However, it does have a lot of other colours there as well, sparkling. So it's not just diamond dust, I believe. I think there are some other particulate added to that. Again, it's a steel nib, and this one, I believe, is, I'm going to try and look at it there. That's a fine nib, I think. Pretty sure it's a fine, or maybe it's a medium. Having trouble reading that there. Hold on. Yeah, it's a fine nib. Very difficult to see when you're actually trying to look through the camera. But I do like it. I think I do prefer the medium nibs on the Esterbrook's. They are Yovo nibs. They're steel nibs. But I typically do, I think, prefer the medium. But I am still liking those fines as well. And I am getting used to more finer nibs over time. I still don't think I'm going to get down to an extra fine nib anytime soon, but maybe if I find a really nice, smooth, wet, writing extra fine nib, who knows, maybe I will go there. I think I do have 1 or 2 extra fine nibs in my collection. The next pen that, again, I picked up recently is this one. It's a Montegrappa. It's not an extra 1930. It's an extra Otto, and you can see the difference here on the cap band compared to an extra 1930 that has the Greek key band. So this is, again, another celluloid. It's the pearl grey version. Absolutely stunning, stunning. You can just see the chatoyance there on that lovely, lovely celluloid. Again, solid silver section, and it's got a Montegrappa nib there as well, and also the ebonite feed there. Again, brilliant pen. These post a little bit more deeper, so they're a little bit shorter when posted, so it doesn't actually post onto the filling knob. So this, you could actually post very nicely at the extra Ottos. The next pen here Again, another Montegrappa I've added recently to my collection. Now, this is a 1930 extra version, and this is the um, Dove of Peace. Now, this is slightly different to these two extra 1930s, and I'll tell you why. It is still celluloid, but it doesn't have a piston knob here. And it doesn't have a metal section or silver section. You do have the Dove of Peace there on the nib. It's a number 6 size nib. It's not a number 8 size nib, which typically you would get on most extra 1930s. It is also, strangely enough, a cartridge converter. Whereas most extra 1930s, not all extra 1930s, but most, will be a piston filling pen. So this pen is a little bit lighter than maybe the other extra 1930s and also the extra Otto, but I'm still liking it. It's quite a nice pen, and I have to say I am liking the bit of the kick that I've been on recently with the Montegrappas. Next pen here is again another Esterbrook Estie. This is the Sparkle Oversize in Garnet. And again, this is beautiful, beautiful material. Again, with that diamond cast material with real diamond dust. And you can see that sparkles there. Again, another steel nib there. It's an Esterbrook nib. And that one's a medium nib. These are JUL nibs, by the way, if you are wondering. You can post a cap. Again, it doesn't post that secure and does wobble a little bit. So it's not a cap that I would want to post on the pen, but you can do so if you really want to. The next pen here is the Esterbrook Estie Oversize, and this is in the Rocky top. Again, another beautiful material here. Again, diamond cast material. So you've got the diamond dust in there, and it's sparkling. It is a really, really beautiful pen, and I really did fall in love with this pen. Now, for my sins, I actually decided to go back to a broad nib. So I got this on a broad nib, to JUL nib again, Esterbrook nib. All of these Esterbrook Esties are converters, they're not pistons or power vac fillers. I do find the broad nib a little bit dry, but then again, I'm writing with like a brownish ink, so maybe that is part of it. Maybe I do need to floss the tines a little bit more. I would like it to write a little bit wetter. I might actually swap nibs over and put a medium nib in there. I will see. It's a steel nib. You can buy replacements really cheaply. I think it's about £15 or £20, so not too much. So. But I could also swap one of the nibs over from one of these if I wanted to. The last pen here is the Gravitas, and this is the Sentry. So this is the larger of the models. I think Ben Walsh does an entry model, which is a smaller version. It does a pocket pen. This is the Sentry. So this is beautiful, beautiful rainbow torch-like material or colour. Very, very nice colour pen. I do like it. It's got a little bit of weight, but not a huge amount. It does have what looks to be a shiny section, but if you can get up close, you'll see that it's got a slight ribness to it. Very fine rib, but it's enough to actually feel. So it's got a bit of a tactile grip to it there. This is a cartridge converter pen, and on here I have got a 1.1 stub nib that Ben did send me. To be honest, I don't normally write with stub nibs, but I am liking this nib. The stub nibs, because it's a steel nib, doesn't have any tipping on it there that you can see on the underneath or on top. So that's typically why I prefer tipping on my pens. So if I do go for a stub nib, I typically will go for a gold or palladium stub nib because they do have tipping on them, but the steel nibs do not. So that's my County Ink pens for this week. I think now let's go and do a writing sample. So the first pen here is the Visconti, and this is the Medici in gold and black. So we'll do an ink swatch here first. And you can see this is quite a wet writing pen. And I have to say, I do like Visconti nibs. So this is the Visconti Medici, and it is the golden black. Now this is a medium, and it's the newer 18 cat gold nibs from Visconti. And the ink in here is KWZ Nuki Brown, which is a very, very nice brown ink, I have to say. I really am liking that a lot. The next pen is the Montegrapper Extra 1930, and this is a striped zebra. So we'll do an ink swatch. Now, I was a little bit unsure about what colour ink to put in here when I first got this pen. I don't usually do black inks, but I was going to try a black ink. And then I thought, well, maybe I'd go for not a black, but it's still a darker ink. So I went for this colour ink, which actually turned out to be a lot darker than I thought it was going to be. So this is the Montegrappa, and it is the Extra 1930, and it is the striped zebra celluloid. And it is a medium, and it is an 18 karat gold nib. Now, I am finding it very hard to actually write on this paper because we're in a bit of a heat wave in the UK at the moment, and our heat wave is not typically what most countries would call a heat wave. It is 30 degrees though inside my house where I am recording this at this moment in time. Our humidity typically is quite high, which actually makes the heat a lot worse. So my hand and my arm is actually sticking to the paper as I write. So it's a little bit more difficult to write. Hopefully it will cool down a little bit over the coming week or so. Now the ink in here is, I said it was a dark ink. It's diamine and it's grape. And that is an interesting colour ink. I typically think of grapes as being green and not maybe purple. But this is a purple, dark purple ink or grape coloured ink. But it's still a little bit darker than most purplish or black grapes that you would probably see, I would say. But it's a nice colour, certainly. The next pen here is a Montegrapper Extra 1930, and this is the vertical zebra. So I think let's do an ink swatch. Now, again, this is a medium nib. These Montegrappers do have a little bit of bounce to them, not a huge amount, not as compared to maybe some Viscontis. And interestingly, I actually did host a pen club recently, and one of the members that came to the pen club actually did comment when he wrote with one of my Montegrappers that this is a little bit firm, not a nail, but firm. And I said exactly, like he was used to some Viscontis, so I do find that these do write a little bit more firmer than Visconti nibs, but that's not a downside. So this is the Montegrappa, and it is the Extra 1930, and it's the vertical zebra. What a name. A striped zebra and a vertical zebra. So this is a medium, and again it's an 18 karat gold nib, and the ink in here is Ackerman, and this is an ink that I typically haven't used a lot lately. It's Dutch Masters. I'm going to abbreviate it because it's Binnenhof Blues, which is an interesting colour ink. It's a blue, darker blue ink. I'd say with a bit of a hint of mauve or purplish to it. Maybe siding towards a blurple. Now, in terms of flexibility of the nib or bounce, right, you can still get quite a line variation out of that nib. So it does still have bounce. It's just not always as much as maybe a Visconti nib would have. The next pen here is the Esterbrook Estie Oversize, and this is the Gold Rush Prospector. So we'll do an ink swatch here. Now this is a fine nib, and I have to say that because of the ink I'm using in this, whenever I take the cap off, it smells. And it's not a smell that I dislike. I actually like the smell. It's just, in this smell of ink, it just smells a little bit strange. So this is, and I'll tell you what the ink is in a moment. This is an Esterbrook, and it's the Estie, and it's the Oversize, but it's the Gold Rush Prospector. And it is a fine nib, not a medium, not a broad. And it's a still nib, it's a Yovo nib. Now, I said that the ink in here smells a little bit strange. I'm going to smell that ink. And it's a KWZ ink. So this does have what a lot of people actually say is a bit of a smell of vanilla. And this is KWZ Old Gold. Now, I'd actually say that this is a really old bottle, so it does have a bit of a smell of vanilla, but I would say it's almost, if you remember back to if you used lead pencils, maybe at school, and you would sharpen them in a pencil sharpener. If you smelt the wood and the mixture of the lead there, it kind of smells like that. Now, some of the newer KWZ inks smell a lot more like vanilla, but this one, because it's an older bottle that I have, doesn't quite smell as potent vanilla as the new ones do. The next pen here, again, is another Esterbrook Estie Oversize, and this is the newer Cosmic Wine. So we'll do an ink swatch here again. And again, this is a fine nib. So I don't normally do fines, but interestingly enough, I think it was the Prospector I got first just before this. I couldn't get it in anything other than a fine nib because it's long sold out. And I got it in a fine nib and I actually liked it. So when I bought the Cosmic Wine, I thought, you know what? I have several mediums, or more than several mediums. And I have a broad. So why not go for another fine? Living on the wild side or the dangerous side. So this is the Esterbrook Estie. And it is the Oversize, but it's called the Cosmic Wine. Now, I actually want to call it something else because of the ink that I've got in here. So it is a fine and it is a still Yovo nib. And the ink in here is Diamine. And it's a Shimmertastic. And it is Wine Divine. And Shimmertastic has the shimmer particles in. Now, when I filled up this pen, I didn't actually shake the bottle. So there are very, very few shimmer particles in that ink, which is good because it's a fine nib. And I probably will keep filling it up like that if I do use that ink again. The only issue is the more ink I use, the less particulate I use, which means there's more in the bottle, which means I'm going to have a crazy shimmer when I do decide to use it in another pen. So I'm not so sure. Maybe I'll switch to a different ink at some point in the near future. The next pen is the Montegrapper, and this is the Extra Otto in the Pearl and Grey Celluloid. So we'll do an ink swatch. And this is the Montegrapper and it's the Extra, Otto, and it's the Pearl Grey, or Grey Pearl even maybe. It is a medium, and it is a 18 karat gold nib from Montegrappa. And the ink in here is an interesting ink. So normally my favourite go-to grey is Diamine Earl Grey. I thought I would try this ink a little while ago, and I really like this ink. So I might have another ink that is very similar to Diamine Earl Grey. Some cases maybe a little bit darker, a little bit more of a bluey grey, possibly just a tinge of blue. And this is Venvustus, and it is Fumo di Londra Grey. Now that is basically London Fog, which I actually have a Visconti London Fog, but it's more of a blue and grey. So that's actually quite an interesting colour, and I have to say I am liking that a lot. So this might, I don't think it's going to become my favourite grey, but it may become maybe my second favourite grey. The next pen here is a Montegrappa. This is again another Extra 1930, but this is the Dove of Peace. And the Dove of Peace, I'll show you there again, it actually has a dove on the nib. And I do have that on my Shiny Lines Dove, Montegrappa, as well. So we'll do another ink swatch here. Now, the difference is this nib is a fine nib. I could only get it with a fine nib. It's also a number 6, not a number 8 size nib. I do find that this is a little bit on the dry side. It might be the red ink as well. I do think, though, that I'm just going to flood the converter a little bit. I do think that the cross strokes are a little bit dry, so I'm going to probably floss these tines a little bit. So that's a bit better there now. So Monty Grappa, and it's the Extra 1930, and it's the Dove of Peace. And this is a fine. So I'll double check. I'm pretty sure, yeah, it's a fine nib. And it's an 18 karat gold nib, but it's a number 6, not a number 8 size. So it is a little bit smaller. Number 6 size nibs are still classed as oversized nibs anyway. Now, the ink in here, I need to just double check because I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, it's an Ackerman Dutch Masters, and it's Steenrud van Vermeer. And I have to say that, again, should I have put a black ink in there? Possibly, but I thought I would actually just put a different colour ink in that pen. So I'm liking that. I would like it to write maybe a little bit wetter, perhaps. The next pen is an Esterbrook Estie Oversize in the Sparkle in the Garnet. So we'll do another ink swatch here. Now, strange enough, I was going to put this ink in the Montegrappa, and I thought, you know what, I actually have this pen inked up, and I have a few pens inked up with this ink, so I thought I can't use this ink again, because I'm just going to have too many pens inked up with this ink. So this is the Esterbrook Estie, and it's the Sparkle in Garnet. Now, most of the Sparkle versions of Esterbrook Esties, they do in the standard and they do in the oversize. The Garnet, I think, was the only one that they didn't do in the regular standard size. Now, this is a medium, and it is a steel nib. It's a Yovo nib. Now, the ink in here is KWZ Beef Eater Red, which is a London Pen Show exclusive ink. And I'm just smelling the ink, and that definitely does have more of a vanilla smell to it. So that's a newer bottle, because that was only made, I think, in the last year or so. The next pen, again, is an Esterbrook Estie Oversize, and this is the Rocky Top. Now, this one will do an ink swatch. And you can see here, it's got a nice brownish colour ink. So this is the Esterbrook Estie. And this is the Rocky Top. Now, it is an oversize as well. You can get this in the standard size. Now, this one I got a broad nib on it. And I used to have, it's a steel nib as well. I used to have this inked up with a completely different ink. And I'm just looking now at the Rocky Top. This is actually inked up with diamine, golden, brown. Now, I can't remember what ink I had in there before. It was a very light ink. It might have been diamine honey or KWZ honey maybe, but it was writing very dry, and just swapping that ink out has made a huge difference to how that pen writes. And it writes like a broad and very wet, whereas previously it wrote very dry and almost like a medium. So it's interesting how an ink can actually completely change the characteristics of how a pen writes. Now, the last pen here is a Gravitas Sentry, and this is the Skittles. And this is a larger nib, and we'll do an ink swatch here first. So it's a stub nib, so sometimes it takes a little bit to get it started. But I've also got, I think, a sheening ink in here as well. So this is the Gravitas. And it's the Sentry. And it's the Skittles. And it is a 1.1 stub nib, and it's a steel Yovo nib. Now, the ink in here, I do need to check my notes because, yes, it's Herbane, and it is violet, and it is Pensy, which I think Herbane claim is a lilac. I would say it's more of a purple, but maybe it's a little bit in between, perhaps. What do you think? So, I think let's go through these pens inked up one more time. So we have a Visconti Medici in the gold and black in a medium 18 karat gold nib, inked up with KWZ and Yuki Brown. We have a Montegrapper Extra 1930 striped zebra in a medium 18 karat gold nib, inked up with diamine grape. We have a Montegrapper Extra 1930 vertical zebra in a medium 18 karat gold nib, inked up with Ackermann Dutch Masters, and this is Binnenhof Blues. We have an Esterbrook Estie Gold Rush Prospector in a fine steel nib, inked up with KWZ Old Gold. We have an Esterbrook Estie Cosmic Wine in a fine steel nib, inked up with Diamine Shimmertastic, and this is Wine Divine. We have a Montegrapper Extra Otto in the Pearl Grey Celluloid in a medium 18 karat gold nib, inked up with Venustus Fumo di Londra London Fog. We have a Montegrapper Extra 1930 Dove of Peace in a fine 18 karat gold nib, inked up with Ackermann Dutch Masters Steenrud van Vermeer. We have an Esterbrook Estie Sparkle Garnet in a medium steel nib, inked up with KWZ Beefeater Red. We have an Esterbrook Estie And this is the Rocky Top in a broad steel nib inked up with diamine golden brown. And then last but not least, we have a Gravitas Sentry Skittles in a 1.1mm steel nib inked up with Herbane Violet Pensée. So there you have it. That's my currently inked pens for this week. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next pen video. Bye bye.